Woman finds a baby buried alive and meets him 20 years later. For most people, having a baby is a wonderful thing. People start planning as soon as they find out that they're pregnant. They look forward to their regular doctor's appointments, they have a baby shower, and they count down the days until they can meet their baby for the first time. Unfortunately, this is not the case for everyone. This is the story of a woman who finds an abandoned baby buried alive, but 20 years later, she gets a call that changes everything. On Saturday, May 16, 1998, a woman named Azita Miladian got a phone call from her friends asking her if she wanted to go dancing. She declined the invitation and she went jogging with dogs in the neighborhood of her Southern California home. Well, while she was on her evening run with her dogs, one of the dogs suddenly stopped running and began digging. Azita had never seen her dog behave this way, and she was stunned. Since this was not normal behavior, she allowed the dog to continue digging. She was shocked when her dog dug up 2 tiny feet poking up out of the ground. When she saw the legs, she assumed the baby was dead. She didn't think a baby could still be alive after being buried like that. When she heard a small cry come from under the ground, she started digging along with her dog. When she took the baby from the ground, he still had his umbilical cord hanging from his belly button. Azita says that she started to cry. She was begging the baby not to die, telling him that she would not leave him. She told him over and over that she loved him. She wanted so much for this baby to live. The situation was one of the saddest you could imagine. This was not a dead baby dumped at the site. He was actually buried alive. Azita says that when she pulled the baby from the ground, he grabbed onto her wrist and started crying. She became very emotional when the baby stopped crying. She couldn't imagine how a person could be so terrible to bury a newborn baby alive. She knew it was up to her to save the baby, so she rushed him to the hospital. As soon as he arrived, he received immediate care. When she got him to the hospital, his body temperature was just 80 degrees, which is life-threatening. Fortunately, he survived. As soon as Azita got the baby to the hospital, they contacted the police. They started an investigation to find out who did this to the adorable baby that the nurses named Christian. About a month after Azita found the baby, the police received a phone call from a woman claiming to be the baby's mother. She asked how much trouble she was in for what she did to her baby, and then she hung up. The authorities believed that the baby's mother was very young and she panicked after giving birth. She likely wasn't thinking clearly when she dumped her baby and buried him alive. When Azita first found Christian, she considered adopting him and giving him a good home. Because there was so much media attention on the story, she thought that it would be too easy for someone to find him if she were to take him in. Instead, she decided to make frequent phone calls to find out how Christian was doing. Sadly, when the baby was finally adopted, Azita could no longer get information on his condition. She just hoped that one day he would look for her and find her the same way that she found him. Well, years passed, and Azita didn't hear anything. She had no idea where the baby was or how his life turned out for 20 years. When the baby left the hospital, he went home with a very loving family. They named him Matthew, but they kept Christian as his middle name. Matthew spent most of his life not knowing that he was adopted. It wasn't until he was 17 years old that he found out that his parents were not his biological parents. When Matthew was 20, he was approached by a radio show who heard his story. They asked him if he'd be willing to take a DNA test to find his biological mother and then get the results live on the air. He agreed. At the time, he wanted to know who his mother was. However, what he wanted more was to meet the woman who saved his life. The producers knew the entire story, and they knew about how Azita saved his life. They decided to invite her to the show as well. She jumped at the chance because she spent the last 20 years wondering what became of the little boy she saved. When Azita and Matthew met face-to-face, she was finally able to feel relief. She was so happy that the baby she saved was raised by a wonderful family. According to Matthew, his childhood was great and he couldn't imagine a better upbringing than what he had. The day of the reunion happened to be Matthew's 20th birthday. Azita took Matthew to the place where she found him 20 years earlier. When Matthew saw the sight that would have been his grave if it weren't for Azita, he became incredibly emotional. Azita shed a few tears as well. The two of them understood that if she hadn't been in that place at that time, Matthew would have died. Matthew was happy that Azita turned her friends down to go dancing that night. Had she gone, he would never have had a chance at life. Matthew never found his biological mother, which he says he's fine with. He says that DNA doesn't make parents, love does. He was also happy to find out that Azita never forgot about him. According to Matthew, it's thanks to Azita that he was able to grow to become a man, and they would have a bond for the rest of their lives.